Winning is not an event. It is a decision. Long before the result appears. Long before the recognition. Long before the reward. Winning begins in the mind. Most people lose before life even tests them. They lose in private. They lose in thought. They lose in interpretation. A challenge appears and their internal voice whispers doubt. Pressure rises and their emotions take control. An obstacle shows up and they label it unfair. They surrender internally. And once the mind surrenders, the body follows. Weakness is rarely visible at first. It hides in small thoughts. It hides in hesitation. It hides in phrases like "this is too hard" or "why is this happening to me?" It hides in blame. It hides in distraction. It hides in the need for validation. And slowly, quietly, it compounds. Strong people operate differently. They do not wait for ideal circumstances. They do not rely on mood. They do not depend on motivation. They understand one fundamental truth. Your mind is the command center of your life. If your thoughts are undisciplined, your results will be inconsistent. If your emotions are uncontrolled, your actions will be unstable. If your identity is weak, your standards will collapse under pressure. You do not rise to the level of your desires. You fall to the level of your mental conditioning. That is what this audiobook will build. This is not entertainment. This is not comfort. This is not gentle encouragement. This is mental conditioning. Here you will not be told what feels good. You will be told what makes you strong. You will learn to control internal dialogue. You will learn to take radical responsibility. You will learn to discipline emotion. You will learn to think strategically. You will learn to detach from outcomes. You will learn to build an identity that does not break. This is about mental positioning. Because every situation in life is neutral until your mind interprets it. Pressure is neutral. Failure is neutral. Rejection is neutral. Delay is neutral. Your interpretation decides whether it becomes fuel or defeat. Right now, most people are reactive. They react to news. They react to stress. They react to other people's opinions. They react to temporary discomfort. They live externally controlled lives. But you are here for something different. You are here to build internal command, internal structure, internal power. By the end of this program, you will not simply feel motivated. You will operate from discipline. You will not chase confidence. You will build it. You will not wait for calm. You will generate it. You will train your mind to win in every situation. Not sometimes. Not when conditions are perfect. In every situation. If you are ready to build that level of mental strength, commit to this process fully. Listen with intensity. Apply with discipline. Repeat with consistency. And if you value content that builds strength instead of comfort, make sure you like and subscribe so you continue receiving conditioning that sharpens your mindset, strengthens your discipline, and elevates your standards. Now prepare yourself. Chapter 1. Win inside before you compete outside. Winning starts in the mind. Before action. Before strategy. Before opportunity. Mental positioning decides outcomes long before circumstances unfold. Most people think winning is external. They believe it depends on talent, resources, connections, timing. They believe success is something granted. Something earned through luck. Something delivered by favorable conditions. That belief is the first loss. Because the moment you think winning is external, you surrender control. Undisciplined individuals wake up and immediately react. They react to notifications. They react to problems. They react to pressure. Their thoughts are not chosen. Their emotional state is not directed. Their focus is scattered before the day even begins. They operate in mental chaos. Disciplined individuals operate differently. They understand that the first victory of the day is internal. They choose their mindset before the world attempts to choose it for them. They decide their interpretation before circumstances demand one. That is control. Weak thinking sounds subtle. It whispers phrases like, "I hope today goes well." It waits. It depends. It reacts. Strong thinking declares, "I decide how today goes." It leads. It directs. It commands. That is the difference. If you lose internally, you will hesitate externally. If you doubt internally, you will shrink externally. If you complain internally, you will perform poorly externally. Internal weakness compounds. A single negative thought repeated daily becomes a belief. A belief repeated becomes identity. Identity shapes behavior. Behavior shapes results. That is how quiet defeat turns into visible failure. Most people never examine their internal dialogue. They let it run automatically. They let old fears speak. They let past disappointments define present expectations. They let imagined outcomes create anxiety before action even begins. They fight battles in their imagination and exhaust themselves before reality ever challenges them. Winners do not allow that. They monitor thought. They challenge distortion. They interrupt defeat language immediately. They do not allow the mind to spiral without resistance. That requires awareness. The first tactical standard is this: observe your internal dialogue daily. Do not judge it. Command it. When you catch yourself thinking in limitation, replace it instantly. Not tomorrow. Not later. Immediately. I can't handle this becomes, I will handle this. This is unfair becomes, this is training. I am not ready becomes, I will adapt. You do not negotiate with weakness. You override it. Second, begin each day with a mental declaration. Not a wish. A declaration. Decide who you are before circumstances attempt to define you. Decide that you are disciplined. Decide that you are composed. Decide that you are capable. You build identity through repetition. Third, eliminate passive language. Words shape perception. Perception shapes performance. Remove phrases that reduce power. Replace them with language that reinforces control. You do not try. You execute. You do not hope. You prepare. You do not wish. You decide. These are small adjustments. But small adjustments, repeated daily, create massive shifts in mental structure. That is how internal dominance is built. Strong people are not free from doubt. They simply do not allow doubt to dictate direction. They feel fear but act anyway. They feel pressure but remain composed. They feel uncertainty but continue forward. Because they already won internally. That is what strong people do. They choose perception. They control interpretation. They command response. They understand that every external situation passes through one filter, the mind. If the filter is weak, everything appears threatening. The filter is disciplined, everything becomes training. That is the difference. From this moment forward, you no longer allow your mind to operate unsupervised. You do not let it drift into negativity. You do not let it repeat self-defeating narratives. You do not let it magnify obstacles. You lead it. You direct it. You train it. Winning is not about what happens to you. It is about what happens within you. And from now on, you win inside first. That becomes your standard. That becomes your discipline. That becomes who you are. Win the internal battle. Every day. Every thought. Every situation. Do not move to the next chapter until you accept this truth. If you control your mind, you control your life. Chapter 2. Take radical responsibility. Ownership creates power. The moment you take full responsibility for your life, you take back control. Winners do not blame. They build. There is a difference. Blame feels relieving in the moment. It protects the ego. It shifts discomfort outward. It says the economy is the problem. It says other people are the problem. It says timing is the problem. It says luck is the problem. But blame is expensive. Because every time you blame, you surrender influence. If it is their fault, you are powerless. If it is the system's fault, you are powerless. If it is circumstances' fault, you are powerless. And powerless people do not win. Disciplined individuals operate from a different position. They assume responsibility even when it is uncomfortable. Even when it is not entirely fair. Even when other people contributed to the outcome. They ask one question: what was within my control? That question changes everything. Most people ask, why did this happen to me? Strong people ask, what can I do about it? That is the difference. When you adopt radical responsibility, you stop negotiating with reality. You stop wishing for different conditions. You stop waiting for someone else to fix it. You become the solution. If your finances are unstable, you take responsibility. If your health is declining, you take responsibility. If your focus is weak, you take responsibility. If your standards are low, you take responsibility. Not to shame yourself. To empower yourself. Because responsibility is not self-blame. It is self-command. Weak mindset says, I didn't choose this. Strong mindset says, I choose my response. Weak mindset says, they made me feel this way. Strong mindset says, I control my reactions. Weak mindset says, I can't because. Strong mindset says, I will find a way. If you do not take responsibility for your emotions, they control you. If you do not take responsibility for your habits, they define you. If you do not take responsibility for your time, it disappears. Responsibility is not heavy. Avoidance is heavy. Avoidance creates anxiety. Avoidance creates resentment. Avoidance creates stagnation. Ownership creates movement. When you fully own your outcomes, you regain authority over your direction. This is about internal locus of control. You decide that your effort matters. You decide that your standards matter. You decide that your response matters. You stop outsourcing your power. Every day, there are small moments where this decision appears. You wake up tired. Do you blame exhaustion or do you execute anyway? You receive criticism. Do you defend automatically or do you evaluate objectively? You face delay. Do you complain or do you prepare? Radical responsibility is practiced in micro moments. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is consistent. Here is the discipline. At the end of each day, review your reactions. Where did you blame? Where did you justify? Where did you avoid? Replace the question, why did this happen, with what will I do next? When something fails, do not attack yourself and do not attack others. Analyze. Adjust. Advance. When you feel frustration rising, pause. Say internally, my response is my responsibility. Repeat that. My response is my responsibility. When you make a mistake, own it quickly. Correct it immediately. Move forward decisively. No excuses. No long explanations. No emotional dramatization. Ownership. Correction. Execution. That is the cycle. You must also take responsibility for your standards. If you tolerate mediocrity in your routine, that is your decision. If you allow distractions to dominate your day, that is your decision. If you accept inconsistency, that is your decision. You are not a victim of your habits. You built them. And what you built, you can rebuild. This is where the shift happens. You stop seeing yourself as someone affected by life. You see yourself as someone shaping life. That becomes your identity. Strong individuals do not wait for fairness. They do not wait for clarity. They do not wait for permission. They decide. They adjust. They act. That's what strong people do. They do not waste energy blaming the wind. They adjust the sail. That's how winners think. When something breaks, they fix it. When something fails, they refine it. When something resists, they strengthen. That becomes who you are. A builder, not a blamer. A creator, not a complainer. And understand this clearly. The more responsibility you take, the stronger you become. The more excuses you keep, the weaker you remain. There is no middle ground. You either own your life or you surrender it piece by piece. From this moment forward, eliminate the language of blame. Eliminate the posture of helplessness. Eliminate the habit of justification. Replace it with ownership. Replace it with correction. Replace it with disciplined response. Say it internally. I am responsible. For my focus. For my effort. For my standards. For my reaction. This is not pressure. This is power. When you stop blaming, your confidence grows. When you stop excusing, your discipline strengthens. When you stop avoiding, your clarity sharpens. Responsibility builds identity. And identity drives behavior. You are not here to live as a reactor. You are here to operate as a creator. That is the shift. From victim mindset to creator mindset. From passive reaction to active construction. From complaint to command. This is where winning accelerates. Because once you own everything, nothing owns you. Take responsibility. Fully. Immediately. Relentlessly. That is the standard. That is the power. That is how you win. Chapter 3. Rewire your self-talk. Your brain believes what you repeat. Not what you wish. Not what you hope. Not what you post publicly. What you repeat. Every thought is a command. Every internal sentence is an instruction. Every repeated phrase becomes a program. Most people are unconsciously programming their own limitations. They say, I'm not good at this. They say, I always mess things up. They say, this is just who I am. They say, I can't handle pressure. And then they wonder why they remain stuck. Your mind does not argue with repetition. It obeys it. Weak individuals speak in defeat long before defeat arrives. They narrate their struggle. They rehearse their fear. They exaggerate their problems. They label themselves with weakness. Then they act surprised when their actions follow the script. Strong individuals operate differently. They guard their internal language. They correct their mental phrasing. They replace powerless words with deliberate ones. Not because it sounds positive, but because it builds power. When a challenge appears, the weak say, this is too much. The disciplined say, this is difficult, and I will figure it out. When they fail, the weak say, I knew I couldn't. The disciplined say, that approach didn't work. Adjust. One sentence collapses identity. The other strengthens it. The difference is not talent. The difference is language. If you constantly repeat, I can't, your brain stops searching for solutions. If you constantly repeat, I'll find a way, your brain begins scanning for options. Your mind works for you, but only if you command it properly. If you do not control your self-talk, your environment will. Your past will. Your fears will. Other people's opinions will. And weakness will compound. Negative language creates hesitation. Hesitation creates inaction. Inaction creates regret. Regret reinforces negative language. That is the cycle. And it is self-created. You must interrupt it. Immediately. When your mind says, I'm not ready, you respond internally, I will prepare. When it says, I'm overwhelmed, you respond, focus on one move. When it says, what if I fail? You respond, if I fail, I learn. This is not pretending. This is conditioning. Cognitive reframing is not about denial. It is about direction. You do not deny difficulty. You redefine it. You do not deny fear. You command it. You do not deny uncertainty. You move anyway. That shift begins with language. The weak wait for confidence before they act. The strong change their internal dialogue first. Then confidence follows. You must eliminate permanent language. Stop saying, I am bad at this. Start saying, I am building skill. Stop saying, I'm not disciplined. Start saying, I am training discipline. Stop saying, I can't focus. Start saying, I am strengthening focus. Language shapes identity. Identity shapes behavior. Behavior shapes results. That is the chain. If your language remains weak, your identity remains fragile. If your identity remains fragile, pressure will break you. Your internal voice must become firm, clear, controlled. You do not negotiate with yourself. You instruct yourself. Wake up and think, execute. Not, do I feel like it? Face resistance and think, solve. Not, why me? Hit obstacles and think, adapt. Not, this is unfair. Your brain listens. It listens to repetition, T listens to certainty, T listens to emotional intensity. So you repeat strength. You repeat control. You repeat resilience. Every day. In small moments. When no one hears you. Because that is where identity is built. Self-talk is not just motivation, T is programming. You are either installing limitation or installing power. There is no neutral setting. If you constantly narrate yourself as tired, stressed, unlucky, behind, or incapable, your nervous system aligns with that story. Your posture changes. Your energy drops. Your effort weakens. But if you narrate yourself as disciplined, capable, learning, focused, improving, your nervous system adjusts differently. Your body aligns with strength. Your focus sharpens. Your effort increases. You become what you repeat. That is why repetition matters. Not once. Not twice. Daily. When you wake up. When you struggle. When you are tempted to quit. When results are slow. Especially when results are slow. Because that is when weak language returns. That is when doubt becomes loud. That is when most people collapse internally. You will not. You will catch it. Immediately. You will hear the weak sentence forming in your mind and you will replace it before it grows roots. That is discipline. That is control. That is mental rewiring. You do not wait for positivity to feel natural. You force new language until it becomes automatic. Repetition builds familiarity. Familiarity builds belief. Belief builds identity. And identity dictates action. This is how you move from I can't to I'll figure it out. From I'm stuck to I'm adapting. From this is impossible to this requires strategy. That shift changes everything. Because a person who believes they can figure things out does not quit easily. A person who sees every obstacle as data does not collapse emotionally. A person who speaks strength internally eventually becomes strong externally. That is how winners think. They do not allow their internal voice to become their enemy. They train it. They sharpen it. They command it. You must do the same. Monitor your language. Correct it immediately. Repeat the stronger version. Repeat it again. Repeat it under pressure. Do it until it becomes natural. Do it until your first thought is controlled. Owe it until discipline replaces doubt. Owe it until your internal voice sounds like authority, not insecurity. That becomes who you are. A person whose mind works for them, not against them. A person who directs thought instead of being dragged by it. That is the difference. And from this point forward, you will not allow careless language to weaken you. You will speak strength internally. You will repeat capability. You will command your thoughts. Because you understand now. Winning begins with what you say to yourself when no one is watching. Rewire it. Control it. Strengthen it. And never let your own voice become your limitation. Chapter 4. Control your emotional climate. Emotions are data, not dictators. That is the principle. Your emotions are signals. They are information. They are indicators of perception. But they are not commands. They are not authorities. They are not leaders. When you allow emotions to lead, you surrender control of your life to temporary internal weather. Most people live emotionally driven lives. If they feel motivated, they act. If they feel tired, they stop. If they feel offended, they react. If they feel anxious, they withdraw. Their decisions shift with mood. Their standards collapse under discomfort. Their discipline disappears under pressure. They do not control their emotional climate. They are controlled by it. And that instability costs them everything. Because life does not wait for your emotions to stabilize. Pressure will arrive without permission. Criticism will arrive without warning. Delays will happen. Disappointment will happen. Conflict will happen. If your emotions dictate your behavior, your performance will always fluctuate. Strong individuals operate differently. They experience emotion, but they do not obey it. They feel anger, but they respond strategically. They feel fear, but they move forward deliberately. They feel pressure, but they remain composed. They feel frustration, but they think clearly. That is emotional discipline. If you do not master your emotional climate, weakness compounds quietly. A single emotional outburst damages trust. A single impulsive decision creates long-term consequences. A single moment of uncontrolled anger destroys opportunities. A single panic response under pressure reveals lack of preparation. Emotion without discipline creates chaos. And chaos destroys positioning. When you react impulsively, you give away power. When you allow external circumstances to determine your internal state, you become unstable. When you allow other people's behavior to dictate your emotional response, you surrender leadership over yourself. Weakness spreads internally first. You must build emotional regulation deliberately. First, pause before response. Every time. Insert a gap between stimulus and reaction. Even 2 seconds is power. That pause is control. Second, label the emotion without judgment. This is frustration. This is fear. This is anger. When you name it, you create distance from it. You shift from being the emotion to observing it. Third, slow your breathing intentionally. Controlled breathing signals stability to your nervous system. Slow breath. Steady posture. Relaxed shoulders. Physical control creates emotional control. Fourth, lower your voice during conflict. When others escalate, you stabilize. When others panic, you slow down. Emotional contrast is power. Stability under chaos creates authority. Fifth, delay major decisions when emotionally charged. Decisions made in heightened emotional states are rarely strategic. Calm first. Decide second. These are not suggestions. These are standards. You train this daily. In small situations. In traffic. In disagreements. In inconvenience. In delay. In minor irritation. Because if you cannot control yourself in small discomfort, you will collapse under major pressure. That is how strength is built. Repetition under resistance. Emotional mastery is not suppression. It is regulation. You are not pretending you do not feel. You are deciding that feelings will not control your behavior. That shift changes everything. When you control your emotional climate, you become predictable in your standards, consistent in your behavior, reliable under stress. That reliability builds self-trust. And self-trust builds power. You begin to notice something different. Situations that once triggered you lose intensity. Conversations that once escalated now stay controlled. Challenges that once overwhelmed you now feel manageable. Not because life became easier. Because you became stronger. Strong people are not calm because life is easy. They are calm because they are trained. They have conditioned themselves to respond intentionally instead of reacting emotionally. That's what strong people do. They do not allow temporary emotion to sabotage permanent goals. They do not allow frustration to destroy discipline. They do not allow fear to override preparation. They feel. They pause. They decide. They act with control. Again and again. Control is power. Stability is power. Composure is power. If you lose emotional control, you lose strategic advantage. When others panic and you remain steady, you win. When others argue and you stay grounded, you win. When others quit under pressure and you remain disciplined, you win. Because emotional discipline compounds. Each controlled response strengthens identity. Each regulated reaction builds resilience. Each calm decision reinforces leadership. Over time, this becomes who you are. You are no longer someone who tries to stay calm. You are someone who is composed. That's the difference. You must decide that your emotional state is your responsibility. Not circumstances. Not other people. Not outcomes. You. When you wake up irritated, you regulate. When pressure increases, you stabilize. When criticism appears, you evaluate without ego. When disappointment hits, you process without collapse. You do not give your power away. Emotions are temporary. Identity is permanent. Choose identity. Choose control. Choose discipline over impulse. Train yourself until composure becomes automatic. Train yourself until reaction slows down. Train yourself until stability is your default. Because the person who controls their emotions controls their life. From this moment forward, you do not react. You respond. You do not escalate. You regulate. You do not surrender to internal chaos. You command it. Control your emotional climate, or it will control you. Chapter 5. Think in possibilities, not problems. Problems are neutral. Your interpretation gives them weight. Most people see an obstacle and immediately narrow their vision. Their thinking collapses inward. Their mind locks onto what is missing, what is unfair, what is difficult. They replay the inconvenience. They magnify the resistance. They emotionally attach to the disruption. They become problem-focused. And when the mind is fixated on the problem, it cannot search for possibility. Weak thinkers ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Strong thinkers ask, "What can I build from this?" Weak thinkers see a closed door and stop moving. Strong thinkers look for another entrance. That is the difference. A problem-focused mind drains energy, a possibility-focused mind generates energy. One shrinks, one expands. Most people are conditioned to scan for danger, difficulty, and disadvantage. They rehearse worst-case scenarios. They anticipate failure. They expect resistance. They train their mind to look for what can go wrong. And because the brain moves toward what it repeatedly searches for, they find more problems. Over time, this pattern becomes identity. They call themselves realistic. They call themselves cautious. They call themselves practical. But underneath, it is fear disguised as logic. And fear limits perception. When perception is limited, options disappear. When options disappear, power disappears. If you do not change this pattern, weakness compounds. You will hesitate more often. You will second-guess opportunities. You will overanalyze simple decisions. You will see complexity where there is possibility. You will stall progress because your mind is trained to detect difficulty before it detects opportunity. That is how potential dies. Quietly. Internally. Repeatedly. You must interrupt that pattern. You must train your mind to search for openings. The moment a problem appears, you do not react emotionally. You pause. You ask a better question. What is still possible here? Not why me? Not what if I fail? Not what will people think? What is still possible? That question alone repositions your power. You discipline yourself to generate at least 3 potential solutions before you allow frustration to settle in. You refuse to dwell on the obstacle without simultaneously seeking alternatives. You redirect attention from resistance to resourcefulness. You condition your thinking daily. When something goes wrong, you immediately search for leverage. When a delay occurs, you search for preparation time. When rejection happens, you search for redirection. You do this every time. No exceptions. At first, it will feel forced. Your mind will want to return to complaint. It will want to replay inconvenience. It will want emotional release. You override it. You choose possibility. Because winners are not blind to problems. They simply refuse to stop at them. They understand that every obstacle contains information. Every setback contains instruction. Every disruption contains an alternative path. They look longer. They think wider. They stay composed. That becomes strategic advantage. Opportunity bias is not optimism. It is discipline. It is the deliberate choice to focus on what can be done instead of what cannot. It is mental training. It is controlled perception. And perception shapes performance. If you train your mind to detect openings, you will begin seeing them everywhere. In conversations. In setbacks. In competition. In uncertainty. You will respond faster. You will adapt quicker. You will move when others freeze. That is how winners separate themselves. They think in options. They think in angles. They think in alternatives. Most people collapse under unexpected pressure because they only prepared for one path. When that path closes, they panic. But when you train your mind to expect variability, you do not panic. You pivot. You stay steady. You stay analytical. You stay forward-focused. That is power. To build this, you establish daily mental standards. You eliminate complaint language from your vocabulary. The moment you catch yourself describing how difficult something is, you redirect to describing what can be done next. You practice mental expansion. When faced with limitation, you ask, what resources do I already have? Time, skill, access, network, effort, focus. You always have something. You stop waiting for perfect conditions. You work with what exists. That is how winners think. They do not wait for better circumstances. They build better strategies. They do not obsess over fairness. They leverage reality. They do not freeze when plans shift. They adapt immediately. That becomes who you are. A possibility thinker. A solution generator. A strategic mind under pressure. And here is the deeper shift. When you consistently think in possibilities, your confidence increases. Because you no longer fear problems. You trust your ability to navigate them. You trust your ability to respond. You trust your ability to create alternatives. That trust becomes internal stability. And internal stability creates external momentum. This is not about ignoring difficulty. It is about mastering response. You will still face obstacles. You will still encounter setbacks. You will still experience disruption. But you will not collapse. You will analyze. You will adjust. You will advance. That is the transformation. From problem-focused to solution-oriented. From reactive to strategic. From constrained thinking to expanded perception. Shorten your reaction time. Lengthen your thinking range. Strengthen your mental flexibility. Again and again. When pressure hits, you do not say, "This is a problem." You say, "This is a puzzle." And puzzles are solved. That is what strong people do. They build minds that search for leverage. They build perception that detects opportunity. They build habits that generate solutions. They train themselves to see beyond the obstacle. That's the difference. You do not stop at the wall. You look for the door. If there is no door, you build one. That is how winners think. Train it daily. Enforce it consistently. Refuse to regress. From this point forward, you do not dwell on problems. You hunt possibilities. And you move. Chapter 6. Develop unshakable self-belief. Confidence is trained, not gifted. No one is born certain and no one is born fearless, no one is born unshakable. Self-belief is constructed. It is built through repetition. It is reinforced through action. T is strengthened through kept promises. Most people misunderstand confidence. They believe it arrives before action. They wait to feel ready. They wait to feel capable. They wait to feel worthy. And while they wait, time moves. Disciplined individuals operate differently. They act before they feel ready. They move before certainty appears. They build proof instead of waiting for emotion. Weak minds seek reassurance. Strong minds create evidence. That is the difference. If you do not build self-belief intentionally, doubt will fill the space automatically. Doubt grows in inaction. Doubt expands when you delay difficult tasks. Doubt multiplies when you break promises to yourself. Every time you say you will wake up early and you do not, you weaken identity. Every time you commit to training and you skip it, you weaken identity. Every time you plan to improve and you procrastinate, you weaken identity. You are always training belief. Either belief in your strength or belief in your inconsistency. There is no neutral. If you continue reinforcing inconsistency, you will hesitate in critical moments. You will second-guess decisions. You will look for external validation before making moves. You will shrink in rooms that require confidence. And shrinking compounds. Opportunities pass. Standards drop. Self-respect erodes. That erosion is silent. But it is destructive. Unshakable self-belief is not loud arrogance. It is quiet certainty. It is knowing that even if you do not know how, you will figure it out. It is trusting that you can adapt. T is standing firm under doubt. This level of belief is built through microproof. Small wins. Small completed commitments. Small daily disciplines. You do not need massive victories to build confidence. You need consistency. Wake up when you said you would. Complete the workout you scheduled. Finish the task you assigned. Keep your word to yourself. Every completed promise becomes evidence. Every repeated action becomes identity. Evidence builds belief. Belief builds posture. Posture changes behavior. And behavior reinforces identity again. That is the cycle. Most people chase motivation. Winners chase proof. Motivation fluctuates. Proof accumulates. You must reduce the gap between what you say and what you do. If you speak discipline, live discipline. If you claim focus, practice focus. If you demand growth, execute growth. Self-belief strengthens when your actions align with your standards. You cannot talk your way into confidence. You behave your way into confidence. Start with controlled environments. Choose one standard. Make it non-negotiable. When you say you will train, you train. When you say you will study, you study. When you say you will rest, you rest with intention. No drama. No excuses. No negotiation. That repetition stabilizes identity. And when challenges appear, you will not question yourself. You will reference proof. You will think, I have done difficult things before. You will think, I do what I say. You will think, I execute. That internal reference point is power. Doubt will still attempt to enter. Fear will still whisper, but they will not dominate. Because you have evidence. Understand this clearly. Confidence without discipline is fragile. Confidence built on praise is unstable. Confidence based on comparison is temporary. Unshakable self-belief is internal, it is private. It is built in silence. No one sees the early mornings, no one sees the repeated practice, no one sees the internal battles you win daily. But you see them. And that is enough. Every time you push through resistance, you are voting for a stronger identity. Every time you finish what you start, you are reinforcing strength. Every time you maintain standards under discomfort, you are becoming someone reliable. Reliable to yourself. That reliability becomes certainty. Certainty becomes calm. Calm becomes power. Weak individuals rely on hype. Strong individuals rely on habit. Weak individuals seek applause. Strong individuals seek alignment. Alignment between word and action. Alignment between standard and behavior. Alignment between intention and execution. That alignment is confidence. When you enter rooms, you will not need to prove yourself. When you face pressure, you will not collapse. When you encounter uncertainty, you will not freeze. Because your belief is not emotional. It is structural. You built it brick by brick. Do not attempt to leap into massive goals without strengthening daily integrity. Start small. Execute consistently. Increase difficulty gradually. Raise the weight. Raise the standard. Raise the expectation. But never lower your word. Your word is your foundation. If you say you will do something, you do it. If you commit, you complete. If you decide, you follow through. That is how winners think. They do not rely on feeling powerful. They rely on being dependable. Dependable actions create dependable identity. Dependable identity creates unshakable belief. And when belief is unshakable, performance elevates automatically. You do not hesitate. You do not shrink. You do not seek permission. You execute. That is what strong people do. That is how winners think. That becomes who you are. Repeat it. Confidence is trained. Belief is built. Certainty is earned. Daily. Quietly. Relentlessly. From this moment forward, reduce empty words. Increase disciplined action. Track your promises. Honor them. Stack proof. Stack discipline. Stack identity. And watch doubt lose its voice. Develop unshakable self-belief. Not tomorrow. Now. Chapter 7. Stay calm under pressure. Pressure exposes the truth about you. It reveals what you have practiced. It reveals what you believe. It reveals who you really are. When everything is comfortable, anyone can appear composed. When conditions are predictable, anyone can look confident. But when time is short, stakes are high, and uncertainty increases, the mask disappears. Pressure does not create weakness. It exposes it. Most people fear pressure. They avoid it. They resent it. The moment intensity rises, their breathing shortens. Their thoughts scatter. Their emotions spike. They rush decisions. They speak carelessly. They tighten up internally. They panic. And panic destroys precision. A weak mind interprets pressure as danger. It signals threat. It triggers emotional chaos. It narrows perspective. It pushes urgency over strategy. But a disciplined mind sees pressure differently. Pressure is a privilege. Pressure means it matters. Pressure means there is opportunity. Pressure means growth is available. Strong individuals do not run from pressure. They train for it. They expect it. They prepare their nervous system to remain steady when others become unstable. That is the difference. If you cannot remain calm under pressure, your skill will never reach its full expression. Your intelligence will shrink. Your preparation will collapse. You will sabotage yourself in the moments that count most. Talent without composure fails. Effort without composure crumbles. Ambition without composure backfires. Calm is power. When you stay calm, you see options others miss. When you stay calm, you think clearly. When you stay calm, you conserve energy. When you stay calm, you control the room. Pressure is not your enemy. Untrained reaction is. You must condition your response. Start with your breathing. Slow it down deliberately when intensity rises. Lengthen the exhale. Control the rhythm. Your breath is the gateway to your nervous system. When you command your breath, you command your state. Next, control your posture. Do not shrink. Do not fidget. Stand or sit with deliberate stillness. Physical stability reinforces mental stability. Then control your internal language. Replace "this is too much" with "I am built for this." Replace "what if I fail" with "handle what is in front of you." Direct your mind toward execution, not fear. Focus on the next action, not the entire outcome, not the imagined disaster, just the next move. Strong people simplify under pressure. Weak people complicate. Train yourself in small moments. When minor inconveniences appear, practice calm. When plans shift unexpectedly, practice calm. When someone challenges you, practice calm. Repetition builds conditioning. You do not suddenly become composed in a crisis. You become composed because you have practiced composure daily. Pressure reveals preparation. If you avoid difficult situations, you remain fragile. If you step into controlled discomfort consistently, you become resilient. Voluntarily expose yourself to challenges. Difficult conversations. Strict deadlines. High standards. Not recklessly. Deliberately. Each exposure strengthens your tolerance. You are not trying to eliminate stress. You are expanding your capacity. That is growth. Weak minds seek comfort. Strong minds build capacity. Under pressure, most people react emotionally. They defend. They blame. They over-explain. They lash out. They spiral. You will not. You will pause. You will breathe. You will assess. You will respond. That pause is power. In that pause, you separate stimulus from reaction. In that pause, you choose your behavior. In that pause, you assert dominance over impulse. That is emotional discipline under fire. Calm does not mean passive. Calm does not mean slow. Calm means controlled intensity. A steady mind can move fast without losing precision. A regulated nervous system can execute aggressively without chaos. That is the standard. If you fail to develop this, pressure will always own you. High-stakes moments will drain you. Opportunities will intimidate you. You will remain average because intensity overwhelms you. But when you master calm, something changes. You begin to welcome challenge. You begin to operate clearly when others freeze. You become the stable presence in unstable environments. People trust stability. Opportunities reward composure. And most importantly, you trust yourself. Because you know that when intensity rises, you do not collapse. You center. That becomes who you are. You are not fragile. You are not reactive. You are not emotionally chaotic. You are composed. Pressure sharpens you. It does not shake you. It reveals your preparation. That is how winners operate. They do not wait for calm environments. They create calm within themselves. Over and over, again and again. Under stress, under scrutiny, under uncertainty. Calm. That is strength. That is control. That is advantage. Train it daily. Protect it fiercely. Demand it from yourself. When pressure comes, and it will, you do not panic. You perform. Stay steady. Stay deliberate. Stay unshaken. That is your command. Chapter 8. Build relentless discipline. Discipline beats motivation. Every time. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is structural. Motivation rises and falls with mood. Discipline operates regardless of mood. If you depend on motivation, you will be inconsistent. If you build discipline, you become inevitable. Most people live emotionally driven lives. They act when they feel inspired. They delay when they feel tired. They start strong and fade quickly. They wait for the right moment. They wait for energy. They wait for excitement. They move when it feels good. They stop when it feels hard. That is weakness. Disciplined individuals move differently. They do not consult emotion before action. They do not negotiate with comfort. They do not require excitement to execute. They operate from standards. When it is time to work, they work. When it is time to train, they train. When it is time to focus, they focus. No drama. No negotiation. No emotional debate. That is the difference. When you rely on motivation, you build fragile progress. You start. You stop. You restart. You lose momentum. You rebuild momentum. You repeat the cycle. Your identity becomes unstable. And every time you break a promise to yourself, your self-trust weakens. Self-trust is everything. If you cannot rely on yourself, you cannot build confidence. If you cannot build confidence, you cannot build power. And without power, you remain reactive. Weakness compounds quietly. One skipped commitment becomes 2.2 becomes habit. Habit becomes identity. Soon, you are someone who talks more than you execute. That must end. Discipline is not intensity. It is repetition. It is showing up when you do not feel like it. It is executing when energy is low. It is honoring your standards when no one is watching. You must simplify discipline. Wake up when you said you would do the work you committed to. Finish what you start. Limit distraction. Control your environment. Repeat daily. No complexity, no dramatic systems, no productivity obsession. Standards. You decide a standard. You meet the standard. You repeat the standard. Again. And again. And again. This is how structure replaces chaos. Create non-negotiables. A non-negotiable is an action that happens regardless of mood. It is not optional. It is not flexible. It is not emotional. It is law. When your alarm goes off, you rise. When it is time to train, you train. When it is time to focus, distractions are removed. When it is time to rest, you rest with intention. Structure eliminates decision fatigue. The more decisions you leave to emotion, the more inconsistency you create. Build simple routines. Keep them stable. Protect them aggressively. Consistency over intensity. Intensity burns out. Consistency compounds. You do not need to do everything. You need to do the right things repeatedly. Discipline also means removing what weakens you. Limit unnecessary scrolling. Limit reactive conversations. Limit environments that drain focus. Guard your energy. Guard your time. Guard your standards. Weak people chase motivation videos. Strong people build daily structure. Weak people seek hype. Strong people build habits. Weak people depend on feeling ready. Strong people act ready. That becomes who you are. At first, discipline feels restrictive. It feels rigid. It feels demanding. But that is because you are transitioning from chaos to order. Chaos feels free, but it produces anxiety. Structure feels strict, but it produces freedom. When you know you can trust yourself, anxiety decreases. When you know you execute daily, doubt weakens. When you know your standards are stable, confidence rises. Confidence is built through kept promises. Every time you follow through, you deposit into your identity. Every time you quit early, you withdraw from it. Ask yourself daily, did I keep my word? Not to others, to yourself. Discipline is self-respect in action. If you say you will train, train. If you say you will build, build. If you say you will improve, improve. No excuses, no emotional storytelling, no external blame. Just execution. You must detach from how you feel about the task. The task is neutral. Emotion is temporary. Standards are permanent. Feel tired? Execute. Feel uninspired? Execute. Feel uncertain? Execute. Action changes state. Waiting reinforces stagnation. The disciplined mind does not argue. It acts. And once discipline becomes automatic, life changes. Opportunities increase because consistency builds competence. Confidence increases because repetition builds mastery. Calm increases because structure reduces chaos. You stop chasing motivation. You become self-directed. That is power. Discipline is quiet. It is not flashy. It is not loud. But it is unstoppable. When others fluctuate, you remain stable. When others hesitate, you move. When others burn out, you continue. That's what strong people do. They do not need applause. They do not need excitement. They need alignment. Alignment between word and action. Alignment between standard and behavior. Alignment between identity and execution. And that alignment builds authority. Internal authority. When you build relentless discipline, you stop asking for permission from your emotions. You stop waiting for external validation. You stop negotiating with comfort. You become decisive. You become structured. You become dependable. That becomes who you are. And once discipline defines you, winning becomes predictable. Not because life is easy, but because you are consistent. Not because obstacles disappear, but because you do not. Discipline beats motivation. Every time. Build structure. Protect standards. Execute daily. No negotiation. Become the person who follows through. Become the person who finishes. Become the person who does not break. That is how winners are built. And that is who you are becoming. Chapter 9. Master the Art of Strategic Thinking. Winning requires foresight. If you only react to what is in front of you, you will always be behind. Strategic thinking is the difference between movement and progress. It is the difference between effort and advancement. It is the difference between being busy and being effective. Most people live tactically. They respond to what demands attention. They answer messages. They solve immediate problems. They chase quick wins. They make decisions based on emotion, urgency, or impulse. They move constantly. But they do not advance intentionally. Disciplined individuals think differently. They think beyond the moment. They think beyond the emotion. They think beyond the temporary satisfaction. They ask one question repeatedly. What does this lead to? That question separates the reactive from the strategic. The reactive mind asks, how do I feel right now? The strategic mind asks, what are the long-term consequences? The reactive mind seeks relief. The strategic mind seeks advantage. The reactive mind chases validation. The strategic mind builds positioning. If you do not develop anticipation, life will constantly surprise you. And surprise creates stress. Stress clouds thinking. Clouded thinking produces poor decisions. Poor decisions compound into patterns. Patterns become identity. And identity becomes destiny. Weakness compounds quietly. A single impulsive decision feels small, a single emotional reaction feels justified, a single moment of delay feels harmless. But decisions stack. Impulses stack. Delays stack. 5 years later, the results are visible. Not because of one dramatic failure, but because of consistent short-term thinking. Short-term thinking creates short-term lives. Strategic thinking requires restraint. It requires delayed gratification. It requires saying no when yes feels good. It requires patience when urgency screams. It requires clarity when emotion tries to rush you. Most people cannot delay gratification. They need immediate reward, immediate recognition, immediate comfort. That is why they lose long-term leverage. You must train yourself to pause before acting. Not to hesitate, not to doubt, but to calculate. Before you speak, ask what it creates. Before you commit, ask what it costs. Before you react, ask what it produces. You must think in second-order consequences. The first consequence is obvious. The second consequence defines your future. The first consequence of skipping discipline is comfort. The second consequence is stagnation. The first consequence of emotional reaction is release. The second consequence is damaged positioning. The first consequence of impulsive spending is pleasure. The second consequence is restriction. Strategic thinkers look past the first reward. They focus on the second result. This is anticipation. You build it daily. Each morning, visualize obstacles before they appear. Not with fear. With preparation. Anticipate distractions. Anticipate stress. Anticipate fatigue. Decide your response before the pressure arrives. Pressure is predictable. So prepare predictably. You must also build long-term vision. Not vague dreams. Not emotional fantasies. Clear direction. Where are you positioning yourself in 3 years? Who are you becoming? What skills are you compounding? What habits are you reinforcing? Without direction, effort scatters. With direction, effort multiplies. Strategic thinking also requires emotional detachment from urgency. Urgency tricks you into believing everything matters equally. It does not. Not every opportunity deserves attention. Not every invitation deserves acceptance. Not every conflict deserves engagement. Winners conserve energy for leverage. You must decide what deserves your focus. Every yes is a no to something else. Every commitment consumes capacity. Choose carefully. Structure your week with intention. Allocate time based on long-term impact, not short-term noise. Protect deep work. Protect recovery. Protect reflection. Reflection sharpens strategy. Set aside time to evaluate decisions. What worked? What failed? What cost you? What positioned you? This is not emotional reflection. It is analytical evaluation. Detach, assess, adjust. Strategic thinking turns life into a chessboard. Not paranoia. Not overthinking. Calculation. You do not need to control everything. You need to anticipate patterns. Patterns reveal outcomes. If you repeat the same inputs, you will produce the same outputs. If you engage in the same environments, you will experience the same results. If you tolerate the same standards, you will build the same ceiling. Strategic thinking breaks patterns intentionally. It asks, what must change now to alter the long-term outcome? That question creates power. Power is not loud. It is positioned. When you operate strategically, you stop being surprised by predictable consequences. You stop reacting emotionally to outcomes you indirectly created. You stop blaming circumstances. You recognize cause and effect. And you take control of cause. That is anticipation. You build patience. You build calculation. You build foresight. You stop chasing quick wins. You start building durable advantage. That's what strong people do. They think ahead. They move deliberately. They sacrifice now for leverage later. That's how winners think. They are not obsessed with today's applause. They are committed to tomorrow's dominance. And when pressure arrives, they are ready. Because they saw it coming. Because they prepared. Because they positioned themselves. That becomes who you are. Not reactive. Not impulsive. Not rushed. Calculated. Composed. Forward thinking. Every decision is a seed. Every habit is a direction. Every day is positioning. You either position for strength or you position for struggle. There is no neutral. From this moment forward, you do not act without thought. You do not commit without clarity. You do not chase without calculation. You anticipate. You prepare. You execute with foresight. That is the art. And that is the difference. Master your thinking. Master your timing. Master your positioning. Win before the game begins. Chapter 10. Detach from outcomes. Commit to effort. Results are not under your control. Effort is. The moment you tie your emotional stability to outcomes, you surrender your power. Outcomes fluctuate. Markets shift. People change. Circumstances evolve. When your identity depends on results, your confidence becomes fragile. You rise when you win. You collapse when you lose. That is instability. That is weakness. Strong individuals anchor themselves to effort. They measure themselves by execution. They evaluate their day by standards upheld, not applause received. They understand a simple truth: anxiety lives in results. Power lives in effort. Most people obsess over the scoreboard. They obsess over approval. They obsess over recognition. They perform with one eye on the crowd and one eye on the outcome. Their emotions swing with every response. When validation comes, they feel strong. When it disappears, they feel lost. Their nervous system becomes a hostage to external feedback. Disciplined individuals detach from that trap. They focus on what they control: preparation, execution, repetition, adjustment. They show up fully whether anyone is watching or not. They work with the same intensity whether results are immediate or delayed. That is stability. That is strength. If you do not detach from outcomes, fear will control you. Fear of failure. Fear of judgment. Fear of loss. That fear will cause hesitation. Hesitation will weaken action. Weak action produces weak results. Weak results reinforce doubt. Doubt compounds. Weakness multiplies. Attachment to outcomes creates pressure that paralyzes. You begin performing not to execute, but to avoid embarrassment. You begin speaking not to express truth, but to protect image. You begin acting not from strength, but from insecurity. That erosion is subtle, but it is destructive. The longer you operate this way, the more fragile you become. One setback can shake you. One rejection can silence you. One loss can define you. That is not resilience. That is dependence. You must reverse the focus. Shift from outcome obsession to effort obsession. When you wake up, your only concern is execution. Did you uphold your standards? Did you act with discipline? Did you move with precision? That is the measurement. That is the evaluation. You train yourself to detach by narrowing your attention to controllable actions. Before any task, define the effort standard. Not the result. The effort. Define how focused you will be. Define how consistent you will be. Define the quality you will maintain. Then execute without emotional negotiation. When results arrive, you observe them without emotional extremes. If the outcome is favorable, you do not inflate your ego. If the outcome is unfavorable, you do not collapse your identity. You analyze. You adjust. You continue. This is how fearless execution is built. Fearless does not mean reckless. It means emotionally independent from the result. It means you give everything without demanding immediate reward. It means you trust that disciplined effort compounds over time. Weak minds demand instant validation. Strong minds demand daily discipline. You must practice emotional neutrality after outcomes. When something succeeds, say to yourself, execution continues. When something fails, say to yourself, execution continues. No drama. No emotional spikes. Just forward movement. That repetition conditions your nervous system. It teaches your mind that identity is not at stake. It teaches your body that action is safe. Over time, hesitation decreases. Boldness increases. Focus sharpens. You stop asking, what if I fail? You start asking, did I execute fully? That is the shift. Detach from praise. Praise can seduce you into complacency. Detach from criticism. Criticism can distract you from growth. Both are external. Both are unstable. Your internal standard must remain higher than both applause and doubt. This does not make you indifferent. It makes you disciplined. You still pursue excellence. You still aim to win. But you do not emotionally collapse if the timeline stretches. You do not reduce effort when recognition is delayed. You build regardless. That is process orientation. Process orientation is power. It keeps you grounded. It keeps you consistent. It keeps you moving when others quit. Most people quit because the outcome did not match their expectation. They trained their emotions to expect immediate return. When reality did not cooperate, they withdrew effort. That is emotional immaturity. You do not withdraw effort. You double down on standards. Every day, you measure controllables. Focus. Preparation. Intensity. Consistency. That repetition becomes automatic. The need for external validation weakens. The need for approval fades. Self-trust strengthens. When you commit fully to effort, something shifts internally. Pressure reduces. Clarity increases. You become present. You act without overthinking. You execute without second-guessing. Because your identity is no longer tied to the result, your performance improves. That is the paradox. Detachment increases effectiveness. When you release desperation, you gain precision. When you release fear of loss, you gain courage. When you release obsession with results, you gain control over action. Control over action is everything. You cannot control timing. You cannot control other people. You cannot control external circumstances. But you can control preparation. You can control discipline. You can control your response. That is enough. Winners understand this deeply. They are not emotionally addicted to winning. They are addicted to preparation. They are addicted to standards. They are addicted to improvement. That is why they sustain performance. You must build the same orientation. Every time you catch yourself obsessing over an outcome, redirect your focus to effort. Every time anxiety appears, ask yourself what action is within your control. Then execute it immediately. Immediate action dissolves emotional overthinking. Do not wait to feel confident. Execute. Do not wait for reassurance. Execute. Do not wait for certainty. Execute. Confidence is built through controlled effort repeated consistently. Over time, this becomes who you are. You become stable under uncertainty. You become composed during delays. You become relentless regardless of recognition. That's what strong people do. They detach from results and attach to discipline. That's how winners think. They do not beg outcomes to cooperate. They force growth through effort. That becomes your identity. You are not defined by wins or losses. You are defined by standards upheld. You are defined by effort sustained. You are defined by execution repeated. That's the difference. From this point forward, you measure yourself by what you control. You eliminate emotional dependency on outcomes. You commit fully to disciplined effort. You execute without fear. You adjust without ego. You continue without hesitation. Detach from outcomes. Commit to effort. And build the kind of mind that cannot be shaken by results. Chapter 11. Turn setbacks into setup. Failure is not the opposite of winning. It is part of it. Weak individuals interpret setbacks as identity verdicts. They experience rejection and internalize it. They experience loss and personalize it. They experience delay and assume inadequacy. Every obstacle becomes evidence that they are not enough. That interpretation weakens them more than the event itself. Strong individuals interpret setbacks as data. Nothing more. Nothing less. A setback is feedback. A rejection is redirection. A mistake is instruction. When you remove emotion from the evaluation process, you gain power. When you remove ego from correction, you accelerate growth. Most people fear failure because they fear what it says about them. They protect their image instead of building their skill. They avoid risks that could expose weakness. They retreat at the first sign of resistance. That avoidance feels safe in the moment. But long-term, it erodes capacity. Avoidance compounds weakness. When you avoid failure, you avoid growth. When you run from discomfort, you shrink. Every time you interpret a setback as proof of inadequacy, you train your brain to hesitate next time. Hesitation reduces intensity. Reduced intensity lowers performance. Lower performance increases failure probability. The cycle tightens. That is how people stay stuck for years. You must break that pattern. The moment a setback occurs, you respond with control. Not emotion. Not blame. Not excuses. Control. You ask one question: what is this teaching me? That question shifts you from victim to strategist. There are only two productive responses to failure: adjust or intensify. Sometimes both. You examine your preparation. Was it sufficient? You examine your focus. Was it sharp? You examine your discipline. Was it consistent? You analyze without self-attack. You evaluate without self-pity. Most people either collapse into shame or inflate into denial. Both reactions block improvement. Shame freezes action. Denial prevents correction. You do neither. You remain steady. When something does not work, you refine your approach. You do not abandon the mission. You refine the method. That distinction is critical. Weak minds quit goals. Strong minds adjust strategies. If you allow setbacks to define you, you will begin lowering your standards to avoid discomfort. You will aim smaller. You will play safer. You will dilute ambition to protect ego. That is how potential dies quietly. You must refuse that erosion. Instead of saying, "This is not working for me," you say, "What must I strengthen?" Instead of saying, "Maybe I am not capable," you say, "What skill is missing?" Instead of withdrawing effort, you increase precision. Resilience is not emotional toughness alone. It is structured response. It is disciplined recovery. It is the ability to remain composed while correcting course. You train resilience by controlling your immediate reaction to disappointment. When you fail, you do not vent. You do not dramatize. You do not catastrophize. You pause. You breathe. You evaluate. Emotional spikes cloud analysis. Calmness sharpens it. Over time, your nervous system learns that setbacks are not threats. They are challenges. Challenges activate focus. Focus activates growth. That shift is powerful. If you do not build resilience, life will break your rhythm repeatedly. Delays will frustrate you. Rejection will paralyze you. Mistakes will haunt you. You will carry the emotional weight of every misstep. That burden slows you down. Weakness compounds when setbacks linger in the mind longer than necessary. You must shorten recovery time. The faster you return to disciplined action, the faster you regain momentum. Momentum restores confidence. Confidence restores aggression. Aggression restores performance. That is the cycle you build intentionally. Every setback becomes a setup when you respond correctly. Every mistake becomes preparation when you analyze it honestly. Every delay becomes development when you continue executing. This requires ego control. Your ego wants to protect your image. It wants to blame others. It wants to create narratives that shield your pride. That protection feels good temporarily, but it blocks growth permanently. You do not protect ego. You protect standards. Standards demand improvement. Standards demand honesty. Standards demand correction. That's what strong people do. They do not hide from their flaws. They confront them. They dissect them. They eliminate them. That's how winners think. They do not view failure as humiliation. They view it as refinement. When you build this mindset, fear of failure weakens. You become willing to attempt more. You become willing to stretch further. Because even if you fall short, you know you will extract value from the experience. That confidence changes your posture. It changes your energy. It changes your willingness to engage. Most people hesitate because they cannot emotionally handle loss. You can. Because you have trained yourself to convert it into instruction. This does not mean you enjoy failure. It means you use it. You feel disappointment briefly. Then you shift to analysis. You identify one correction. Then you implement immediately. Immediate correction builds strength. Delay in correction builds stagnation. Do not replay failure repeatedly in your mind without extracting a lesson. That is self-torture. Extract the lesson once. Apply it. Move forward. Repetition of regret weakens identity. Repetition of correction strengthens identity. You are not fragile. You are adaptive. Adaptation is power. From this point forward, setbacks will not intimidate you. They will sharpen you. They will expose weaknesses that need strengthening. They will reveal gaps that require discipline. You welcome that exposure because it makes you stronger. You do not shrink when things go wrong. You stabilize. You analyze. You adjust. You execute again. That's the difference. Weak individuals stop after failure. Strong individuals begin refinement. Weak individuals internalize defeat. Strong individuals extract data. Weak individuals hesitate after rejection. Strong individuals increase precision. You choose your response. And your response defines your trajectory. Turn every setback into setup. Turn every loss into leverage. Turn every mistake into mastery. You are not defined by falling short. You are defined by how quickly you rise, correct, and continue. That becomes who you are. Resilient. Strategic. Unbreakable. Chapter 12. Protect your mental environment. Your mind absorbs what surrounds it. Every thought you think is influenced by what you repeatedly expose yourself to. Every standard you hold is shaped by what you tolerate daily. Your environment is not neutral. It is conditioning you. It is programming you. It is either sharpening you or weakening you. Most people underestimate this. They believe they are mentally independent while consuming chaos. They scroll endlessly. They entertain negativity. They tolerate weak conversations. They surround themselves with distraction. Then they wonder why their focus is fractured and their discipline is inconsistent. You cannot build a strong mind in a polluted environment. Weak individuals treat their mental space carelessly. They allow anyone access to their attention. They allow any content into their awareness. They engage in gossip. They entertain drama. They expose themselves to fear-driven narratives. Their mental diet is undisciplined. Over time, their thinking becomes scattered. Their standards lower. Their energy declines. Disciplined individuals guard their mental environment aggressively. They understand that attention is power. They choose what enters their awareness. They decide what deserves their focus. They filter conversations. They filter media. They filter influences. They treat their mind like a controlled facility, not an open marketplace. If you do not protect your mental environment, weakness compounds silently. Negativity becomes normalized. Distraction becomes habitual. Comparison becomes automatic. You begin reacting instead of directing. You begin consuming instead of creating. Your internal dialogue becomes crowded with external noise. Clarity disappears. Discipline weakens. Identity fractures. The longer this continues, the harder it becomes to think independently. You start adopting the emotional tone of your environment. If you are surrounded by complacency, you become complacent. If you are surrounded by fear, you become cautious. If you are surrounded by excuses, you begin justifying your own. That erosion is gradual, but it is relentless. You must take control of your environment intentionally. Start with what you consume daily. Reduce exposure to content that triggers emotional instability. Remove constant streams of outrage and comparison. Limit entertainment that glorifies weakness. Replace passive scrolling with intentional learning or focused silence. Silence strengthens awareness. Next, evaluate conversations. Refuse to participate in gossip. Refuse to entertain repetitive complaining. Refuse to engage in discussions that drain energy without building perspective. Redirect conversations toward growth, solutions, and standards. You do not need to announce this shift. You enforce it through boundaries. Calmly. Firmly. Physical space matters as well. Disorder around you often reflects disorder within you. Maintain clean, structured surroundings. Design your environment to encourage focus. Remove unnecessary distractions. Keep tools accessible. Make discipline easier than distraction. Environment should support your standards, not challenge them. Weak individuals wait to feel motivated in chaotic settings. Strong individuals engineer conditions that demand focus. They eliminate friction. They remove temptation. They build systems that reduce decision fatigue. That is intentional design. You must also protect your inner environment. Monitor the language you allow internally. If comparison appears, interrupt it. If negativity arises, confront it. Do not let a single destructive thought linger unchallenged. Immediate correction prevents compounding damage. Mental hygiene requires daily maintenance. This is not about isolation. It is about filtration. You do not withdraw from the world. You decide how you engage with it. You choose quality over noise. You choose standards over trends. You choose growth over stimulation. When you protect your mental environment, something powerful happens. Focus deepens. Emotional volatility decreases. Confidence stabilizes. Decision-making sharpens. You begin thinking clearly because the clutter has been removed. Clarity is strength. Most people are mentally exhausted not because life is overwhelming, but because their environment is undisciplined. Constant notifications. Constant comparison. Constant consumption. Their nervous system never resets. Their attention never consolidates. You must create space for concentration. Schedule periods of uninterrupted work. Protect them. No devices. No interruptions. No multitasking. Train your mind to operate deeply. Depth builds mastery. Fragmentation builds mediocrity. Guard your mornings especially. The first input of the day sets the tone for your mental state. Do not begin with noise. Begin with intention. Control the first thoughts you think. Direct your focus before the world attempts to direct it for you. That single shift builds dominance over your day. Even the people you spend time with influence your standards. Observe how you feel after interactions. Energized or drained. Focused or scattered. Accountable or complacent. Adjust accordingly. Proximity shapes identity. You are not obligated to remain in environments that weaken you. Strong individuals prioritize alignment. They choose environments that demand growth. They place themselves in rooms where standards are higher. They seek conversations that challenge them. They immerse themselves in discipline. That's what strong people do. They do not gamble with their mental state. That's how winners think. They understand that excellence requires controlled exposure. Over time, protecting your mental environment becomes instinctive. You immediately recognize distractions. You quickly distance yourself from negativity. You become selective without apology. Focus becomes your default state. That becomes who you are. A disciplined mind in a disciplined environment multiplies results. Reinforce this daily. Guard your attention. Filter your inputs. Design your space. Elevate your conversations. Interrupt negativity. Protect your focus. Repeat it. Guard your attention. Filter your inputs. Design your space. Elevate your conversations. Interrupt negativity. Protect your focus. That repetition builds strength. You cannot expect elite performance from an undisciplined environment. You cannot demand clarity while tolerating chaos. You cannot build confidence while absorbing insecurity. You decide what surrounds you. You decide what influences you. You decide what conditions your mind. From this point forward, you operate intentionally. You reduce noise. You increase depth. You protect your energy with precision. Your mind is not public property. It is controlled territory. Defend it. Build it. Strengthen it. Protect your mental environment, and you protect your future. Chapter 13. Upgrade your identity. You do not get what you want. You get what you believe you are. Every action you take is a reflection of identity. Every habit you repeat is an expression of self-concept. You cannot outperform the image you hold of yourself for long. You may force temporary discipline. You may generate short bursts of effort. But if your identity remains small, your behavior will shrink back to match it. This is the ceiling most people never see. They attempt to change outcomes without changing identity. They chase new results while carrying the same self-image. They try to act confident while internally believing they are inadequate. They attempt discipline while still identifying as inconsistent. That internal conflict guarantees collapse. Strong individuals understand something critical: behavior follows identity. Most people identify with their past. They define themselves by former mistakes. They introduce themselves internally as the person who procrastinates, the person who struggles, the person who falls short. They rehearse those labels quietly. They reinforce them daily. Then they wonder why nothing changes. Weak identity produces weak standards. Weak standards produce weak actions. Weak actions reinforce weak identity. The cycle tightens. If you do not consciously upgrade your identity, you will unconsciously repeat your limitations. You must decide who you are becoming before you see proof. Identity is not discovered. It is chosen. This is where discipline intensifies. You no longer say, "I want to be more focused." You say, "I am a focused individual." You no longer say, "I want to be consistent." You say, "I am consistent." That shift is not affirmation. It is commitment. When you claim an identity, you accept the standards that come with it. You do not negotiate with them. You do not excuse yourself from them. You align your behavior with them immediately. Most people wait for evidence before upgrading identity. Strong individuals upgrade identity first and create evidence through repetition. If you refuse to elevate your self-concept, you will sabotage progress. The moment success begins to exceed your internal image, discomfort appears. You will unconsciously pull yourself back to familiar ground. That is why people relapse into old patterns. Their identity was never rebuilt. You must rebuild from the inside. Start with clarity. Define the traits of the person you are becoming. Precision, discipline, emotional control, strategic thinking, relentless effort. Do not romanticize them. Define them as daily standards. Then enforce alignment. When faced with a decision, ask one question: what does the disciplined version of me do? Then do that immediately. No delay. No emotional negotiation. Repetition hardens identity. If you repeatedly act with discipline, you become disciplined. If you repeatedly respond with composure, you become composed. Identity is not formed in theory. It is formed in repeated action. Most people allow temporary emotions to override long-term identity. They say, "I don't feel like it." That sentence reveals misalignment. Feelings are temporary. Identity is structural. If your identity is strong enough, feelings become irrelevant. You must become stronger than your moods. When your alarm sounds, the weak identity says, "I am tired." The upgraded identity says, "I am disciplined." And discipline moves. That is the difference. When pressure rises, the weak identity says, "This is overwhelming." The upgraded identity says, "I handle pressure." And composure activates. That is the difference. Your self-concept determines your ceiling. Raise it deliberately. Stop identifying as someone trying. Stop identifying as someone hoping. Stop identifying as someone wishing. Those identities are fragile. They collapse under stress. Identify as someone who executes. Execution is stable. Execution is measurable. Execution builds credibility with yourself. Every time you follow through, self-trust increases. Self-trust strengthens identity. Strengthened identity increases follow-through. The cycle reverses in your favor. But understand this clearly: upgrading identity requires letting go of who you were. You cannot carry old labels forward. You cannot protect outdated narratives. You cannot repeatedly reference your past limitations as justification for present weakness. That attachment keeps you small. Release it. Your past does not dictate your standard. Your past does not define your capability. Your past does not limit your discipline. What you repeat now defines you. Most people underestimate the power of internal language. They speak casually about themselves. They say, "I'm bad at this." They say, "I've always struggled." Those statements carve identity into the mind. The mind obeys the label. You must become precise with internal language. Replace "I can't" with "I don't accept that standard." Replace "I struggle" with "I am building mastery." Replace "I'm inconsistent" with "I am correcting my discipline." Language directs identity. Identity directs behavior. Behavior directs results. If you continue to label yourself according to weakness, weakness becomes permanent. Strong individuals guard their identity fiercely. They do not entertain self-defeating descriptions. They do not tolerate internal narratives that reduce their capacity. They correct themselves immediately. That correction builds power. This is not ego. This is structure. An upgraded identity does not mean arrogance. It means alignment. It means your actions match your declared standards. It means your behavior reinforces your self-concept daily. You must raise your internal standard beyond convenience. The upgraded version of you does not skip effort because it is uncomfortable. The upgraded version does not abandon discipline because it is inconvenient. The upgraded version does not retreat under criticism. That is who you are building. When you consistently act from this elevated identity, something stabilizes internally. Doubt weakens. Hesitation decreases. Confidence becomes quiet but firm. Not loud. Not performative. Stable. You stop asking for permission. You stop waiting for validation. You stop negotiating with weakness. Because that is not who you are anymore. That's what strong people do. They do not attempt to change behavior temporarily. They redefine themselves permanently. That's how winners think. They understand that identity is the foundation. Everything else is structure built on top. That becomes who you are. Disciplined. Composed. Strategic. Consistent. Not sometimes. Not when convenient. Always. The more you act from this identity, the more natural it feels. The more natural it feels, the less effort it requires. The less effort it requires, the more unstoppable you become. Identity precedes performance. Upgrade it. Decide who you are. Enforce it daily. Protect it relentlessly. You are not chasing change. You are becoming the standard. Upgrade your identity. And refuse to return to who you used to be. Chapter 14. Stabilize your inner world. External chaos is constant. Internal chaos is optional. The world will not calm down for you. Pressure will not disappear because you feel overwhelmed. People will not become predictable because you prefer certainty. Conditions will always fluctuate. Opinions will always shift. Unexpected events will always arise. If your internal state mirrors every external disruption, you will live in permanent instability. Strong individuals understand this clearly. They do not wait for calm environments to feel calm internally. They build calm within themselves. They train their nervous system to remain steady when circumstances are not. Most people operate differently. When the environment becomes loud, they become loud internally. When pressure increases, their thoughts scatter. When conflict appears, their emotions spike. They react instantly. They speak impulsively. They decide emotionally. Their inner world is fragile because it is controlled by outer conditions. That fragility compounds over time. When your emotional state is dependent on circumstances, you become predictable. Stress controls you. Urgency manipulates you. Other people's moods influence your decisions. You begin living in reaction mode. You lose precision. You lose clarity. You lose authority over yourself. Weakness does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like constant agitation. Sometimes it looks like quiet anxiety. Sometimes it looks like irritability that never fully disappears. That erosion is slow, but it is destructive. If you do not stabilize internally, every challenge feels personal. Every obstacle feels threatening. Every delay feels offensive. Your emotional responses become exaggerated. That exaggeration damages relationships. It damages opportunities. It damages performance. Strong individuals operate from inner stability. They pause before responding. They assess before reacting. They separate events from emotions. They refuse to let temporary discomfort dictate permanent decisions. That is emotional sovereignty. Emotional sovereignty means you own your reactions. It means you choose your tone. It means you decide your pace. It means no one else controls your internal climate without your permission. You must train this deliberately. Begin with breath control. When tension rises, slow your breathing intentionally. Slow breathing slows impulsive reaction. It interrupts escalation. It signals control to your body. This is not softness. This is regulation. Regulation creates clarity. Next, create a response gap. When triggered, do not answer immediately. Do not move instantly. Insert space between stimulus and reaction. Even a few seconds changes everything. That space is power. In that space, you decide who you are. Weak minds react. Strong minds choose. You must also control internal language during chaos. When pressure rises, most people say internally, "This is too much. I can't handle this. This is unfair." That language accelerates instability. Replace it immediately with disciplined language. I remain steady. I handle pressure. I respond with control. Repetition builds conditioning. Conditioning builds stability. Stability is not the absence of emotion. It is mastery over emotion. You will still feel anger. You will still feel stress. You will still feel urgency. But those emotions will not control your behavior. They will pass through without dominating. If you do not train this, small disruptions will feel enormous. Minor criticism will feel like rejection. Routine obstacles will feel like crises. Your energy will drain rapidly. Your focus will fracture. Over time, this creates exhaustion. Exhausted minds make poor decisions. Poor decisions create more chaos. More chaos increases emotional instability. The cycle repeats. You must break the cycle. Build a daily practice of internal stillness. Even brief moments of silence without stimulation condition your nervous system to tolerate calm. Sit without distraction. No phone. No noise. No input. Just controlled breathing and awareness. At first, it will feel uncomfortable. That discomfort reveals dependency on stimulation. Stay anyway. Stability grows through discomfort. Another standard: never raise your voice to compensate for lack of control. Volume does not equal authority. Intensity does not equal strength. Controlled tone under pressure communicates power. That discipline reinforces identity. When conflict appears, slow down instead of speeding up. When urgency increases, narrow focus instead of scattering attention. When uncertainty rises, anchor to what you control. That repetition rewires your baseline state. Most people are externally driven. They respond to every notification, every comment, every disruption. Their focus is fragmented. Their mood shifts hourly. They are pulled in every direction. You will not live that way. You will operate from internal command. That means your mood is not dictated by news. Your self-worth is not dictated by opinions. Your decisions are not dictated by temporary emotions. You evaluate calmly. You decide deliberately. You move steadily. That is how leaders operate. That is how resilient individuals operate. That is how winners maintain longevity. Inner stability creates strategic advantage. While others panic, you calculate. While others overreact, you remain composed. While others collapse under pressure, you expand capacity. That is the difference. You must also detach from emotional contagion. When others are anxious, you do not absorb their anxiety. When others are angry, you do not mirror their anger. You observe without internalizing. You respond without absorbing. That boundary protects energy. Energy preserved is power preserved. Over time, your baseline becomes steady. Not passive. Not emotionless. Steady. Grounded. Controlled. People will notice. Chaos will not rattle you. Delays will not destabilize you. Criticism will not derail you. You will become difficult to provoke. Difficult to shake. Difficult to intimidate. That is strength. And this strength is not loud. It is quiet. Controlled. Intentional. That's what strong people do. They master their internal climate before attempting to master the external world. That's how winners think. They know the real battlefield is internal. That becomes who you are. You become centered in disorder. You become calm in urgency. You become deliberate in conflict. You become stable under pressure. That's the difference. From this point forward, no external chaos dictates your internal state. You decide your response. You regulate your emotions. You command your tone. You slow your reactions. You operate from inner stability. You lead yourself first. And you build a mind that remains unshaken in any environment. Chapter 15. Live as if you have already won. Winning is an identity before it is an event. Most people chase victory as if it is something outside of them. They believe winning will finally give them confidence. They believe achievement will finally give them certainty. They believe success will finally give them peace. They postpone their power until circumstances change. That is backward. Strong individuals understand that winning begins internally. It begins in posture. It begins in standards. It begins in the way you think, speak, move, and decide before any external evidence appears. They do not wait for proof. They become proof. Weak minds say, "When I succeed, I will feel strong." Strong minds say, "I feel strong, so I will succeed." That is the shift. If you wait for results to confirm your identity, you will always hesitate. You will always doubt. You will always operate cautiously. But when you decide that you are already disciplined, already focused, already capable, your behavior aligns immediately. Living as if you have already won does not mean arrogance. It does not mean delusion. It means certainty in your standards. It means composure under pressure. It means acting with precision regardless of current position. Most people walk into rooms seeking approval. Winners walk into rooms carrying presence. Most people speak hoping to be validated. Winners speak with clarity because they trust their preparation. Most people shrink when challenged. Winners stabilize and adjust. If you do not adopt this identity, you will remain externally driven. You will wait for permission. You will wait for confidence. You will wait for ideal conditions. Waiting weakens momentum. Waiting trains hesitation. Waiting erodes belief. You do not wait. You decide. You decide that discipline is your baseline. You decide that composure is your default. You decide that effort is non-negotiable. You decide that setbacks are temporary and standards are permanent. That decision changes posture immediately. Your shoulders rise. Your speech becomes deliberate. Your thinking becomes structured. Your actions become intentional. Living as if you have already won means you stop negotiating with weakness. You stop tolerating inconsistency. You stop explaining away mediocrity. You hold the line. You wake up and execute. You face pressure and stabilize. You encounter resistance and adapt. Not because the world confirms you, but because you confirm yourself. Most individuals are reactive to environment. Their mood follows events. Their energy follows feedback. Their belief follows results. That instability keeps them average. You operate differently. Your identity leads. Circumstances follow. This is embodiment. Embodiment means your actions and your beliefs are aligned. There is no gap. There is no performance. There is no pretending. Discipline is not something you turn on. It is who you are. Focus is not something you borrow. It is natural. Emotional control is not forced. It is trained. You have trained your mind chapter by chapter. You have built awareness. You have taken responsibility. You have rewired self-talk. You have controlled emotion. You have shifted to possibility thinking. You have strengthened belief. You have conditioned calm under pressure. You have chosen discipline over motivation. You have sharpened strategic thinking. You have detached from outcomes. You have transformed setbacks into setup. You have protected your mental environment. You have upgraded identity. You have built inner stability. Now you embody it. You no longer chase winning. You represent winning. Weak individuals hope for breakthroughs. Strong individuals become unbreakable. Weak individuals search for inspiration. Strong individuals operate from standards. Weak individuals fluctuate. Strong individuals remain steady. That's the difference. When you live as if you have already won, fear decreases. Desperation disappears. Comparison fades. You compete with your previous standard. You raise it daily. You execute without noise. This identity compounds. The longer you act from it, the more natural it becomes. The more natural it becomes, the less effort it takes. Eventually, discipline is automatic. Focus is automatic. Emotional regulation is automatic. You become stable. And stability wins long term. There will still be obstacles. There will still be uncertainty. There will still be opposition. But your internal state does not collapse. Your standards do not bend. Your effort does not weaken. You have trained your mind to operate above circumstance. That is victory. Not a moment. Not a milestone. A mindset. From this point forward, you do not ask whether you can win. You ask whether you executed. You do not question your capability. You refine your performance. You do not fear setbacks. You adjust and continue. That's what strong people do. That's how winners think. That becomes who you are. Live as if you have already won. Stand tall. Think clearly. Act deliberately. Execute relentlessly. And refuse to return to who you were. You are not chasing victory. You are building inevitability. You have completed this mental conditioning program. This was not entertainment. This was reconstruction. You did not listen casually. You confronted yourself. You examined your standards. You felt pressure. That pressure was necessary. Growth requires intensity. Strength requires repetition. The mind you enter this audiobook with is not the mind you leave with. You have sharpened awareness. You have strengthened responsibility. You have reinforced discipline. You have elevated identity. But transformation is not a single exposure. It is repetition. Return to these principles. Re-listen. Recondition. Recommit. Every repetition deepens identity. Every repetition strengthens discipline. Every repetition stabilizes emotion. Do not allow this to become temporary motivation. Integrate it into daily behavior. Execute daily standards. Protect your mental environment. Detach from outcomes. Live as if you have already won. This is long-term mental architecture. If this conditioning challenged you, strengthened you, and sharpened you, support the mission. Like this audiobook. Subscribe to this channel. Commit to continued growth. Surround yourself with material that reinforces discipline, clarity, and strength. Your mind is your primary weapon. Your standards are your foundation. Your identity is your advantage. Build it daily. Protect it fiercely. Strengthen it relentlessly. And win in every situation.